Let's jump back in time a little bit. The year is 2015. Netflix is becoming a staple in our living rooms, right? And this whole on-demand mindset is just starting to take over everything. Well, in a university classroom in Norway, one professor saw this happening and asked a pretty radical question. What if education could work just like Netflix? So this explainer, it's all about that single pivotal year and the incredible ideas it sparked for the future of learning.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The whole thing started with a question that, sounds almost ridiculously obvious to us today. Professor Morten Flate Paulsen is standing in front of his master's students, and he just asked them, linear TV, with its fixed schedules, or streaming TV, where you're in charge? And of course, every single one of them picked streaming. But that was just the warm-up act. Then he hit them with the real question. What about education? Do you prefer that linear or streaming? And the source material says they just kind of stared at him, confused. It was like they were trying to connect two parts of their brain that had never spoken to each other before. And that one simple, powerful question, well, it kicked off an entire year of experimentation.
So that's the setup. We're in 2015, and our main character is Professor Paulsen. He realized he wasn't just teaching subjects anymore, he was teaching a whole new kind of student, a student with what he called a streaming and mobile mindset. And instead of fighting it, he just leaned right into it and basically turned his classroom into a living laboratory for what was next.
So that brings us to our first section. We're going to see how Paulsen's day-to-day teaching became this perfect breeding ground for these really groundbreaking ideas about what online learning could actually be.
Now, Paulsen had been in online education for a long time, but these face-to-face students, all in their 20s, they were just a different breed. They came into his world with this built-in expectation of flexibility and on-demand everything. And it was really that clash of perspectives that lit the fuse for all this innovation.
And check this out. This is what's so cool. He gave them a ton of freedom. For one assignment, he just had his students build their own e-learning modules from the ground up. And just look at this list. You've got everything from carrot cake baking and HTML to fiddle playing, poker, and even the video game FIFA. This wasn't just about a theory. It was about them getting their hands dirty and really showing him how they think and learn in a digital world.
So, all this hands-on classroom experience, it led directly to his first big practical idea, something he called the micro-guest lecture. Let's break down exactly what he meant by that.
The idea here is honestly, it's so simple but so powerful. A micro-guest lecture is just a short, live, really focused session with an expert from anywhere on the planet beamed right into the classroom over video. They talk for a bit, they answer a few questions, and that's it. It's this super low-effort, high-impact way to just smash down the classroom walls. And he didn't just talk about it, he actually did it. He brought in an author from Denmark, a course developer from Portugal, and get this, a young entrepreneur all the way from Dubai, all without anyone needing a passport or a plane ticket. He found that these busy professionals were actually pretty thrilled to give 15 minutes of their time to talk about what they do. He even wrote down his best practices so anyone could do it. First, prep your students so they can ask smart questions. Second, have the students actually walk up to the camera to ask their question because it makes it way more personal for the speaker. And third, total pro tip here, always have their phone number as a backup just in case the tech decides to fail on you. Okay, so that was the practical innovation, but his students' whole on-demand mindset sparked a much bigger, much more philosophical idea. What if we rethought the entire structure of school itself? This slide just lays out the battle perfectly, doesn't it? On the left, you've got traditional linear education. Fixed schedules, rigid structures, everybody has to march along at the exact same pace. And on the right, you've got the streaming model, on-demand, self-paced, and completely flexible. It's a huge shift in power, moving it from the institution to the actual learner. So Paulsen came up with this term, streaming education. He basically argued that online learning already has all the tools to do this. So why wasn't it the norm? Why couldn't a student just binge learn a whole topic over a weekend or take a vacation without totally falling behind? The technology was there, but the thinking was still stuck in that old linear world. And to make it really concrete, he created this fantastic checklist you see here. It's basically a test for any course. Can you start whenever you want? Progress as fast or as slow as you need to? Submit your work on your own schedule? Take the final exam when you feel ready? The more times you can say yes to these questions, the closer that course is to being a true streaming education. But, and this is important, Paulsen was a realist. He knew this model wasn't a silver bullet for every single person. He was the first to acknowledge the single best argument against total flexibility. Some students really thrive on structure. They need those deadlines and that group pace of a traditional school to stay motivated and get to the finish line.
Okay, so armed with these two big ideas, micro guest lectures and streaming education, Paulsen didn't just, keep them to himself. 2015 was also a year of intense collaboration. He basically took his ideas on the road to share them, debate them, and make them better with educators all over the world.
This timeline just gives you a quick snapshot of his journey. I mean, from a big Moodle conference in Sweden to a series of Nordic Study Lab meetings across Scandinavia, he was constantly in conversation, really stress testing these ideas out in the wild.
And he was making a real dent. In Malmö, he presented his ideas directly to the founder of Moodle, which, if you don't know, is one of the biggest learning platforms on the planet. He handed them a wish list of features like better tools for tracking individual progress, the exact kind of stuff you'd need to make streaming education a reality for millions.
Then, in Iceland, he visited this educational center that was built on an old US NATO base near Keflavik. And their motto for this whole transformation was, from NATO-based to knowledge-based. I mean, what a perfect physical symbol of his entire philosophy, taking these old, rigid structures and completely reinventing them for a new flexible world of learning. And the year ended with this, well, it's almost poetic. His final workshop was in Lillehammer, the very same town made famous around the world by the Netflix show Lillehammer, a show that helped kickstart our whole global streaming culture. How fitting is it that in that exact spot, he led this deep discussion on the pros and cons of live versus on-demand learning.
So, after this whirlwind year of teaching and innovating and traveling, what was the ultimate lesson? It might not be what you think. Paulsen's final takeaway was that flexibility, as powerful as it is, just isn't everything. And this is the key insight, right here, in his own words. After pushing the absolute limits of what flexible, asynchronous learning could be, he came to this really profound conclusion. We need both. He became a huge believer that the social connection, the human element of in-person education, is an essential experience, especially for young adults. And that leaves us with this final question to chew on. Professor Paulsen's journey in 2015 gave us a blueprint for a more flexible, more student-focused education system. But it also forced him, and now it forces us, to ask something much deeper. As our world gets more and more on demand, what exactly is the unique, the essential, the truly irreplaceable role of being in a classroom, together,